What's up guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review for the Creative T6 speaker system. Yay, I can barely fit behind the box. I'd like to thank Creative for actually sending this out for review. Massive shout out to them, I really do appreciate it. It can be found for £230 on their website directly. It's more expensive on Amazon.co.uk and Amazon USA. I have no idea why, but links will be down in the description below in case you're interested. So let's get to it. I'm going to put in some pictures right now. See, I'm fading in some cool pictures. Yeah, MLG editing. Anyway, as you'll be able to see from the images, what you get in the box is quite an array of speakers and wires. So the wires that you've got RCA to 3.5mm jack, which is found pretty much middle of the picture. You've got a USB input. You've got a European and UK plug in case you move the speaker somehow to another country. You've got the control pod, which plugs into the back of the subwoofer. You've got a small little iPod. Now iPod, I would say iPod or iPhone, but that's the old generation 30-pin ones or 24-pin one. I can't remember which one it was. You've got a small little Bluetooth dongle, which is aptX enabled, allowing you to plug it into any sort of computer or device that has USB, and then stream it wirelessly to the actual T6 Series 2. You've got a little remote control, which is useful for controlling your music. In my experience, I found that the remote control didn't truly work on Bluetooth, so to skip music, at least on my Android phone. So it's just useful just to have it on the go if you so wish, especially for changing inputs. And you've got the two little speakers, which are obviously used for driving your mid-range and your highs. And then you've got the massive subwoofer, well, massive respectively speaking, with all its inputs. So now let's talk about the inputs and just quickly go and give you a little overview of how the subwoofer actually looks like. So here is the rear of the subwoofer. So as you can see at the back, you've got the AC connection on the left hand side. You've got the speaker connections over here, which are 4 ohms speakers each. You've got the right side and left side, so you got full stereo sound, which is pretty obvious. You've got the RCA input. This is for your auxiliary input, your 3.5mm input. You've got a little control pod which connects on via almost like a VGA connection, and you've got the USB connection. What's interesting over here is that you've got the bass level. I was going to say USB level, I don't know why, but yeah, you've got the bass level. And I actually found it, and I'll talk about this in the sound quality section of the actual bass level. So I actually used it pretty much on minimum, if anything, just a small little notch. Anything above that was really overpowering in terms of bass. Now, in terms of the subwoofer unit, it's got 3 separate ports, or should I say speakers, on the side. So you've got the left hand side, the front of it as well, and the right hand side as well, or left or right hand side anyway. So it's got 3 different parts. It's great for putting it next to a wall because all of its 3 separate sounds or ports allow it to breathe really well. Now, speaking about its sound, let's just move on to the actual speakers themselves. Now, the speakers are, in my opinion, extremely well designed and very elegant, at least in my opinion. So you can see over here their look. At the top, the one at the top is able to pivot. Now you might think, why would I need this? Now this is the left hand side driver. So as you can see, when it's pointing that way, it's giving you more of a surround sound. So let's say this is the left hand speaker driver. So over here you can see the right one just on the top of your screen over there. Essentially this gives you more of a surround sound because the music is going away and therefore pretty much encompassing you in sound. Again, I'll get into this in my music, should I say sound section of the review, where I actually found this extremely useful and great in order to add to its soundstage. Now the units themselves are very beautiful. They're protected via a little sheeting over here, obviously with a Creative logo, and at the top they've got a very nice metal finish. Now the problem with this metal finish, is that it's very much a fingerprint magnet, as you can see, and obviously when dust gets on it, it looks pretty ugly. But I mean, in terms of styling wise, I think they've done a fantastic job. It looks really nice and is very much well presented. You can put it on a desk, you can put it in in your living room or whatever, and the speakers really do look the parts. They're very small, they've got a metal finish, metal stand, and are very sturdy, and they don't fall. In terms of its connectors, as you saw at the back of the sub, here are the connectors. So you can't, they're the proprietary connectors, so unfortunately if you have to replace them somehow, you can't replace the cable because it's built in. It would be nice if you had removable cables over here that just in case something happens to your cable, I don't know, like your pet or whatever just drags it or cuts it of some sort, or just from wear and tear, that you could replace the cable with ease. Unfortunately that is not the case with these. So anyway, that's something to bear in mind. Now I'd like to talk about its control pod because it's obviously connected to the subwoofer and all, and this is the main point of contact you're going to have with your music. Now, as you'll be able to see on the left hand side, you've got a 3.5mm input. As soon as you plug in something to here, it basically cancels out any of the other inputs, which is very useful because that's what I presume most people will be doing when they plug in their headphones. They'd want it not to play through the actual speakers but through their actual headphones. So it's a good inclusion, and the way it bypasses the audio is great. The power button is very easy. You just press it and it just turns on. And then you've got source button. So the source button essentially changes between your USB input to your PC and your auxiliary input that you would have, say, to your phone via the RCA inputs. The green, I think, is RCA, and the orange light over here that appears, if it was connected, it would be the USB input. Another point is it's got Bluetooth. So it's got Bluetooth built in, which is fantastic. Again, it's got aptX technology, meaning you get pretty much CD quality transmissions over Bluetooth as long as your device is compatible. When you switch on Bluetooth, you'll see a blue light over here, and when it is connected to your device, it will cancel out all the other inputs, again negating the 3.5mm headphone output there, but it negates all the other inputs, which is fantastic because if you're using Bluetooth, you don't want it to be playing over your, say, USB input from your PC. Of course, you can change it very easily by pressing the source button, and it will change back to your PC, so you can have multiple streams all playing at once, and you just selecting through the different sources. Now at the top, the wheel is essentially for your volume. What I did find is that on Windows, it didn't actually control the Windows volume, it controlled its own volume, which is not a bad thing at all. It's just something that you should bear in mind. But unfortunately, there's no sort of play pause button. I'd have liked if you could press down and it would play pause music, or if it worked interactively with Windows or even Bluetooth, it would have been fantastic. It's just a really small little thing that would have been nice to include. But the control wheel is nice. Again, a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but it's made out of rubber and it looks quite nice, and it's nice and discreet. It's not overly big or too big in size, so it's fantastic. Now I should talk about its Bluetooth technology and its Bluetooth ability. And I'd like to bring the USB into the question over here, and on top of this the actual control pod, which enables Bluetooth. Now the fact of having USB is very useful because some devices might not have Bluetooth enabled by default, and if you have a laptop and you want to wirelessly stream it to your sound system, then you can do so via this USB. You don't have to plug in anything, you just plug this little USB in and it will transmit straight to the device flawlessly. Again, using aptX technology, it's great in order to transmit music, but unfortunately it's using only Bluetooth 2.1 plus EDR, meaning that you do get easy transmission and a quick transmission and a quick pairing, but in terms of distance you're looking at about 10 meters or so, which isn't great in clear line of sight, so when you go through walls it starts reducing quite drastically, so do bear that in mind. So Bluetooth is great, and I did find it to be flawless in terms of its operation. As I said, distance could be a little bit improved if it was using Bluetooth 4.1, but overall it's decent, and again, given the sound quality, transmission over aptX is fantastic. So now let's move on to the sound quality section. Now moving on to this sound quality, which is arguably the most important part, especially given it's a £230 sound system, if not more through different sources. Now, first of all, I'd like to talk about the bass and the lows. So the bass is extremely powerful. The sub bass extends really well and it rumbles extremely well. The mid bass is controlled, which is surprising considering the amount of sub bass it has and the amount of sheer power this little subwoofer unit has. The mid bass is controlled, it has a very, very accurate slam, meaning it doesn't it doesn't feel uncontrolled or sort of a wobbly bass. It's very much accurate and fantastic, no matter the type of music you're listening to. However, speaking of what music you're listening to, I found that if I was playing, say, jazz or classical music, and I know jazz uses quite a bit of bass, but if I was listening to classical music, I felt that the mid bass was just a little bit too powerful, and that was even at the bass level turned all the way down. So the sub is actually very powerful, which is great, but at the same time can be overpowering. In my opinion, if you were trying to negate its overpowering sort of sound, I would definitely try and put it in like an open place on your floor or on your desk or whatever. And the reason behind that is because in a closed enclosure, the bass obviously is personified a lot more. And in my respect, I've got a wooden desk, and when I put it in the corner of my wooden desk, it sounds a lot more strong. When I place it outside of my desk and just on the open space floor, it doesn't have so much of an impact, which is a good thing because you can obviously tune in the bass even louder if you so wish. So the frequency response, in my opinion, is fantastic, but the overpowering nature of it might not suit everyone or might not be perfect for everyone. If you're watching movies, it's going to be fantastic. If you're playing games, it's going to be fantastic. If you listen to R&B and dance music, it's again going to be fantastic. If you're someone into very much classical, the sound system, I would say, might be a little bit too overpowering unless you can EQ it, because in that respect then the bass has got all its capabilities. It's definitely one of the most impressive bass units I've actually heard in comparison to other bass units out there. For example, Logitech that I had, the Z5500 ages ago, that one had more of a wobbly mid bass but a great sub bass response. This on the other hand is smaller, probably has less watts, which I have no idea in terms of its wattage or its output, but it was fantastic to listen to and really well done by Creative. Now moving on from the bass, and let's talk about the mids and the highs, and that comes from the little speakers. Now first of all, the mids were good. They weren't fantastic, they were good. I felt they were quite recessed and a little bit pushed back, and that's mainly due to its massive mid-bass response. Don't get me wrong, the Creative T6s are capable of producing good mids, but they're not forward sounding enough for my liking. Therefore, in comparison to, say, my Celestion speakers at the back and my actual sound system that I normally run, I found that the mids were just a little bit underwhelming. Now, given its price tag, I can't expect the world, considering it's an all-in-one package, but at the same time, I would have just liked a bit more mids presence, or just a little bit more forward-sounding mids. It would have been much better in terms of presentation, and when it came to vocals, or even just gains, for example, it would have been a lot better. Moving on to its highs, I think they were pretty good. They were rolled off at the top end, but they were very good. I was very much impressed in terms of its highs performance. It wasn't too sibilant, it wasn't too, not saying recessed, it wasn't too rolled off. It was good enough. I would have again liked it to extend a little bit more and give me just a little bit of extra sparkle, but overall, in terms of music listening and for gaming, I think it was quite impressive. Now moving on to its soundstage, which arguably to me was probably its most impressive feature. And the reason I'm saying this is because of its speaker size. As you can see, it's actually really small. In comparison to my head or in comparison to my actual hands, it's actually quite small. The speakers are, that's all you're getting. And yet the soundstage was fantastic. Especially when you rotate the speaker across and you have the speaker, for example, positioned towards you. So as you are looking right now, it's positioned towards you and this speaker is looking away. The sound kind of goes around. That's what it felt like. It felt like it's going around, bouncing off your walls or bouncing off sort of your furniture and coming back to you. Obviously this is to do with your room setup and everything, but in terms of like if you have a living room or small room, this actual speaker design over here is so simple but yet so crucial in order to get a fantastic soundstage. When I was doing this, I felt the soundstage was a little bit more narrow and a little bit more focused, and when I did this, it suddenly became much more open. The width and depth increased so much more. This is really impressive considering other speakers out there don't have this sort of design. It's so simple to have, and yet Creative have thought about it and included it in their T6 Series 2. So the soundstage is impressive. I could have expected a little bit more depth with its sound, but given its small driver units on the speakers, and again I don't have the specs, even when I looked it up I couldn't find the specs of the actual driver units, the size of the driver units, but they are very small in comparison to, say, again, my Celestion speakers at the back, which are quite reasonably bigger drivers. And because of this, I felt that the soundstage depth lacked a little bit. The width was there because of its given design, but its depth just lacked a little bit. And I would have liked a bit more depth, but that said, if I wanted more depth, I would have wanted much bigger speakers. Much bigger speakers make it not as attractive and easy to put on a desk. So there's a trade-off there, and I think Creative have chosen to go for a smaller design in order to accommodate for a greater audience and therefore sacrifice on the depth of Soundstage. Now overall, the sound quality is really good. I mean, given its price, I'm very much critical of it, and I must say it can do better in certain different areas. But given it's an all-round package, it's got Bluetooth on there, it's got a little remote, it's got the USB, it's even got the iPod, the old iPod connector included, and its subwoofer is extremely impressive. Given its price, I can say it's quite good as an overall package. It's not amazing, I wouldn't rave about it, but if someone's looking for a decent sound system as an all-in-one and not have to worry about the hassle of moving around, then this sound system is really good. One thing I do think is that it would have really opened up the market for it if it had optical input. Now of course you've got RCA input there, you've got the control pod and the USB input, but let's say you want to connect it up to a TV, most TVs have an optical output, and the optical output would have been fantastic to include on this the subwoofer and therefore the sound system itself, because it will open up more possibilities. Obviously the USB input means it bypasses your sound card in your PC, which is fantastic to have, and all the sort of volume and the amplification is done via the subwoofer and its unit itself, and then transferred to the speakers. So it would have been nice to have the optical input because it's clearly capable of doing it. Of course you can connect it up via 3.5mm jack to your TV or other devices, but optical input would have been just that extra bit on top to add it. So because of that, I can give the sound system an 8 out of 10 rating, which is very high. 7 to 8, I would say, out of 10 is my rating, just because of its, say, missing input of optical. Its sound quality mids could have been just a little bit better, and the overall depth of Soundstage could have been a little bit improved as well. But overall, on the whole, great job Creative, very much impressed with the speaker, and definitely looking forward to seeing what else Creative have to offer, and maybe they'll see a refresh in this line, I have no idea, but that would be quite interesting to see as well. Anyway guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. If you have, make sure you give it a like, comment and subscribe. Definitely let me know in the comments below what you think of this video, and definitely what you think of the sound system itself. If you have it, or if you're thinking about it, or it was something that you're in a market for, let me know. I'll be very much interested to hear. And more than anything, enjoy the music, and do subscribe to see more independent, unbiased reviews, which are quite hard to come across nowadays on YouTube. Trust me. Alright guys, take care. Bye bye.